Hello and welcome to Antique.com. Today we're going to be looking at this AST Bravo P133 system. This is an early Pentium 133 system, 64 meg of RAM. It's missing a CD-ROM drive and it's been out in the dirt and dust for a little bit. But I know it works and boots. The only thing that's missing is the hard drive and the CD-ROM. So I'm going to do my normal, clean this up, install the missing parts, and then we're going to try and load an operating system. As I said, this is an AST Bravo MST P133. Sounds a long name, but basically it's a Pentium 133. On the rear of this machine we can see sound card, PS2 keyboard and mouse, a couple of serial ports, a printer port and onboard graphics. It obviously has a riser card that enables you to fit other units. It's got a couple of PCI slots. One of them is filled up with this network card and the rest are ISA slots. This large unit here undoes with a couple of screws and withdraws, and this is where you can mount your hard drives, and then on top an AT power supply. With the case lid off we can see the back of the machine, and handily they provided a guide to the motherboard with its various jumpers. Turning the base unit round the other way, we don't actually see a lot because there's all these cages in the way of seeing into the motherboard. Okay, so it's a fairly standard looking motherboard. We have a standard BIOS battery, which is useful. It hasn't got one of those little soldered on jobs. We have a CPU with a little tiny processor fan on it. I'm sure that'll be perfectly fine for what it needs to do. It has this additional fan here. I'm not really sure what's going on with that. I'll have a look at that a little bit later. But overall, the top of the motherboard is fairly standard. There's not a lot to worry about. We can see the memory slots at the very bottom along here, and the other memory slots going up and down here. This bit here is actually the network card, so we can't quite see the back of the motherboard, but I notice it's an SIS chipset. I don't think it's going to be too hard to find drivers for it, full stop. I just popped this case down on its side and I noticed there was a screw here. This is something I've not seen in a tower case before, and it's the fact that the base opens up, which just seems completely backwards in that you turn it completely upside down, and what you now get is a much better view of the inside of the computer looking at the base. Okay, with that rear of the machine opened up, as I've done earlier, we can now see our memory in our motherboard completely, and we can see some of the other chipsets. Here's the network card. As I say, it's got four ISA slots and a couple of ISA slots. You can see the onboard memory. You can notice that it's been updated, so this is the full amount of memory. I suspect this has gone to 4 meg from 2 meg, and obviously there are RAM chips there as well, so I've got 4 16 meg sims in here. So for a 1994-1995 machine, using this 133 processor, this is actually quite a high spec. I remember my first computer around about 1994-1995 was a Pentium 90 with 16 meg of RAM, and it was the bee's knees. So 64 meg of RAM and a 133 processor, what was high end at the time. So we're most of the way through the formatting of the hard drive. This is Microsoft NT 3.51 workstation. This is the business version of Windows, which most users for home use would not have used. This is definitely a business system. I've decided to use this as I've done quite a few Windows 95 and Windows 98 installs recently. I've done a few DOS installs, so really all I'm left with is the NT range, just to be different if I'm using Microsoft operating systems. So this could have used 351 or 4.0 versions of the NT operating system, but I have another machine that I will be filming at a later date, which I'm going to put NT4 on, so this plumped for NT351. NT351 was roughly 1993 to sort of 1994, 1995. This machine dates from around about 1994, 1995, so it's an appropriate operating system for the hardware that this machine has. So it has 3 boot disks and a CD-ROM, and it's presently formatting the hard drive as I said a second ago, and then it will start installing from the CD-ROM, as I've already done the boot process earlier. For those of you who are used to Windows 3.11 or Windows 3 even, this should look almost identical. There are some additional functions, so you've got a lot more items in the control panel. You've got things like a decent display panel, which would actually start to look fairly familiar to those who have been using Windows 95. So this part of the NT311 is something very different to what you would see in Windows 3.11. Normally what most people would do is they would shut it down to DOS and then just power the machine off. This actually has a proper shutdown or a shutdown and restart feature, which again is more common to later Microsoft operating systems, but let's give this a throw.